Over here is the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad means the divine, Gita means song, song of of divinity. And this was spoken 3000 BC on a battlefield of all places, um, in India called Kurukshetra. And it's a very, I mean, there's a lot of history behind it. There's a lot of story behind it. There's a lot that's behind what you're actually listening to here. But we're taking certain passages from the Gita and we're really diving deep into them because the level of wisdom contained out here, I think, is deeply lacking in today's time. I see a lot of folks who are really on the new age spirituality bandwagon. I think that it's wonderful to innovate stuff as people are doing now, to create new ideas, to have wonderful concepts. But when they're not grounded in something that is tried and tested over time, um, yeah, they sometimes become flaky. If I can use, if I may be blunt about it. I've come across a lot of that. I've been part of people who took the ancient teachings too seriously, and I've been part of people who took the modern day teachings too seriously. And what I find today is that a healthy blend of both, the ancient and the modern, leads to a more integrated understanding of spirituality. To me, not just to me, but I think to most people who have seriously dived into spirituality, the Bhagavad Gita has been perhaps the most important work they've ever read. It contains a kind of wisdom that isn't part of our present day religious or spiritual lore. It's not the stuff people talk about. They'll There's a lot of teachings out here, but this is different, and you'll see that it's actually quite unique. So we have covered some of like the chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita was very much like an overview, and it talked about everything from um, the journey of the soul, how we go from one body to another, um, and ultimately in our quest is the search for enlightenment, the search for awakening, to come to that place where we can live as divine beings while still in this human form and ultimately transcend the cycle of birth and death. So that is the um, initial place where it starts from. It doesn't beat around the bush to get there, it starts from there. And then it goes on to talk about everything from what are the symptoms of an enlightened being, to what is it that one needs to do, what are the different kinds of spiritual practices, and ultimately what is the easiest, what is the most difficult. So all of that is what we discuss here. It's not about one path, it's not about one way. It's about helping you find your way and giving you the choices you need so that you can find what works for you. But take the time to really be with this because it's a lifelong study. I've spent most of my life on this path, searching since I was about 13 years old, I think, and then practicing and living and doing the things that are talked about here. I've been a monk for many years and then came back and decided that wasn't for me. So walked many paths, an entrepreneur after that, and many other things. So, anyways, if you have any questions before we get started, let me know so we can direct the conversation in that way. Anyone have anything particular that's on your mind right now? Any thoughts or reflections on last time's meetup? Some things that stood out for you, something that really hit home.
Yeah, actually, it's maybe something that was smaller among the topics that we talked about, but you had said something last week that really stuck with me during my meditation throughout this past week, and that's that we try to apply the rules of the world to meditation and we wonder why we're struggling.
Yeah.
And you made the comparison of falling asleep. If you try so hard to fall asleep, it's not going to happen. But if you just let go, then you fall asleep. And that has really been helping me. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Wow, thank you, thank you. And thank you for repeating it so well, for really getting it. Like, wow. Yeah, I did. I tried for so many years and failed. And I was like, I gave up. Meditation doesn't work for me. Maybe it works for some special people, but I'm not one of them. So, and then one day it just happened. I was driving and just suddenly my mind went quiet. And I'm like, what? And then this realization that, maybe it's easy. Maybe I've been trying too hard. But then what does easy look like? Like how do you go there? And that took a while to figure out too. But I think the word you're using, Ariel, is very important. Think of it like this. The state you're trying to reach already exists within you. You're not trying to get somewhere. There is not a place you're trying to go. It's not like you're trying to, do a hike from here to somewhere. It's not like you're, trying to get a job. It's not something you're going to acquire. It's something that already exists in you. It's something that has been longing to come out. What do I mean? Why do I say longing? Because everything you've been doing exhibits the longing for your inner self, your search for happiness, your search for love, your search for youth, even your search to live a long life and never die, let's say, your search for wisdom and knowledge. All of that is contained most perfectly and beautifully within you. So I would say that everything you've been doing has been a search for yourself, for the truth of who you are. And that cannot be attained. It cannot be acquired. It cannot be arrived at. I'm trying to use the terminology we sometimes, our mind comes up with. It's already here. So what are you doing? You're actually allowing yourself to go past the blocks which are in your mind, the blocks that say, oh, only special people can get there. Oh, if he could do it, then yeah, he can get there. Maybe others could get there, but me, I am not like that. I know those blocks because I fell for them myself. So I know them intimately. um, and when you drop all of that stuff your mind is making up, in fact, when you realize your mind's constantly making things up, constantly. And the more you get to challenge your mind, the more you get to, like, I call it being a non-believer of your mind. The more you actually stop believing it, the more you're going to find it easier to access this inner space. That's all you're trying to do, is access it. But the dogs in here are howling away, barking, wah, 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 wah. They don't want you to get through. And so sometimes you've got to give them a little, give it a bone or give it something to chew on. And what is that? There are many processes in meditation. Sometimes it could be just focusing your mind on your breath, or it could be a mantra like Om or any other. There's many mantras. But even in the mantra, you have to go into it. You have to like get lost in it, because meditation is about focus. If there's one word I want you to remember about meditation, any meditation technique you try, it is about focus. Focus means putting all your attention to something, getting lost in it until you emerge on the other side of it. So I see it as a V, or like a V, and then it comes out the other way like an X, right? So think of that. You focus your attention to a point, and then you come out the other side, which is like literally a different zone. Now you could be a runner that goes there. You could be a foodie. You could be a person who's into drugs or sex or anything else, and you'll get there. Except that all those things will have consequences. They'll create addictions. They'll make you put on weight. They'll make you run for your life, whatever. But this here, if you go into it with your breath, there's nothing to do. There's no struggle. There's no hard work. It's not, there's ways to get there, but this is the easiest. breathe. And if you like, learn a mantra. Start with Om. That's perhaps the easiest. Or I love the Krishna mantra. I've been doing that for years. But whichever way you do it, um, experiment. This is not a belief system. This is we call this a sadhana. Sadhana means a practice. A practice means you're going to get it wrong. You're going to fail. Like when you practice anything, you start practicing to play an instrument, you're not going to get it right on the first day. So don't have high expectations. I did. That's why I gave up, because I thought, oh, I'm doing it all wrong. I've tried this and I've tried that and I've tried that and I'm just not getting it. So I gave up. Stop trying. Stop struggling. Stop fighting and relax. Relax into it. As you pointed out, Ariel, it's like falling asleep. You can't, if you try too hard to fall asleep, like a lot of folks tell me, I'm trying so hard to fall asleep and I can't. Yeah, that's the problem. Stop trying. Stop trying and just slide into it, relax into it. And that practice will take you a long way. That will take you closer and closer to that place of inner peace. And it's the peace is just the beginning. Peace is just the beginning. That's the first glimpse. Then from there, there's so much richness that emerges. Hmm. So we're on chapter 4, text. Let's see where we've reached. So now there's a whole description of different practices starting from chat. Oh, by the way, if you don't have it, let me just kind of put it in the chat for you. I think everyone that is here today was there last time as well, but one or two of you weren't. So I put a copy of the Bhagavad Gita in the chat. And if you're on anything other than a phone, you should, well, no, phones and iPads, I find you can't seem to download from Zoom. But it's there now. If you're on a computer, you can download it. Now, we're doing chapter 4, and we're at, yeah, text 24, 25, 26. They're all going through the different processes of the yogis and of the. So I'll kind of read a little bit, if that's okay with you, because I want to get to a place where we can actually start looking at something that we can do that is practical. So So this is referring to how we work in this world in terms of how do you make work a meditation? How do you make work into something that instead of getting you attached and entangled, actually liberates you, frees you, instead of being a slave of your work? How can you make it into something that inspires you, uplifts you, and takes you to a higher level of consciousness? I don't know if you'd all agree. Most people are slaves of their work. We go to work because we've got to survive. We've got to pay the bills. We've got to, um, yeah. And then, of course, there's all these lovely little toys they want to dangle in front of us, anything from fashion to technology. There are all different ways to get us, get a new car. Uh, yeah, different ways in which we are kept on that treadmill. And then whatever we have, we're attached to that. And whatever we're attached to now, um, we're always wanting more. In fact, we're attached to wanting more and more and more and more. I'm saying that that is normal, that is natural. There is a part of it that is very natural, that longing for more. But if only we would take it to the ultimate more, not just this more of, what's the new fashion, the new technology, the new something that's come out, but the more of who you are, the more of like a deeper and deeper understanding and a deeper awareness, and more aligned with living who you are. That would be a great way of channeling that desire for more into something of a higher consciousness, into something more fulfilling, should I say. So, any questions so far, or should I start? Chapter 4, text 23. The work of a person who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. So the modes of material nature, as described in the Bhagavad Gita, are what but make you exactly who you are. The human template that you have. It starts off with your gender, it then goes on to your personality, and then there are these specific gifts that you have, things that you do really well. Maybe you're a very organized person, maybe you're a very creative person, maybe you're a very, I don't know, you have your own specific things that are unique and special about you. Those gifts will often be things that um, you may be using in your life or you may not. So Bhagavad Gita is pointing out here that those are the modes of material nature. Material nature has formed you in a certain way. But one who is able to rise beyond this nature and be fully situated in transcendental knowledge. Notice the words situated in transcendental knowledge. It's not talking about memorizing transcendental knowledge. It's talking about being situated in transcendental knowledge. Situated means you live there. You live there means you live what is actually being taught, right? You walk your talk. It's not just theoretical. So a lot of folks, and I'm guilty of this as well, they'll read a lot of books but act on very little. I would say this is what I learned. Read one book. In fact, take one idea, take one thing that you learned, let's say today, and act on it. I saw how Ariel talked about doing that. She took one idea and started acting on it. And I've done this throughout my life. I'll take an idea that will strike me and I'll say, okay, I'm going to start doing this from now onwards. One of the earliest ones I did was to write a book. And I said, okay, I'm not going to judge anyone from now on. I heard that line from the Bible, judge not lest you be judged. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. I've always hated people judging me. I've always hated people criticizing because I grew up with a lot of that. When you're different from most people, and you get a lot of flack, you get a lot of judgment in high school and amongst students, amongst teachers, parents. And so I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to play the same thing that hurt me. I'm not going to do it to others. And then I thought, I'm not going to do it to myself either. And from now on, that's it. We don't do this anymore. And it became like a vow, like, okay, boom, we're done with this thing. And when you take a stand like that, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. Has any of you ever taken a stand like that for any particular value? It could be honesty, it could be integrity. Has any of you ever taken a stand for something and then really lived it through in your life and seen what the benefits of that are? Let me put it into gallery view and let's take a look at everybody. Anyone ever taken a stand for a particular value or something that you're going to do from here on and stuck by it?
Yeah, um I mean, I feel like I did it for a time, like maybe a year, and I've begun practicing it a little bit less, but I was dedicated to giving love no matter what, even in times when people would anger me, when people would wrong me, just give love no matter what. And You also touched on something that I was practicing a bit while I was doing this, which is giving love to the things that aren't ours. So, like, instead of being jealous of something, like, oh, like I'm seeing that it's in my field, give
Mm-hmm.
love to it because it's here. It doesn't need to be mine.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and during that time of me practicing like devotional love, I was starting my morning with love, with gratitude. And I remember having these waves in my body of just like an overwhelming sensation when I would feel love, like literally just all throughout my body.
Mm-hmm.
And I miss that feeling, but I also don't want to chase that feeling. So it's interesting. Yeah.
How do you give love from that place anytime, all the time? Where do you access that love from? How does it happen? Do you need to be in love?
No, and I wasn't in love at the time.
Right.
No, not with a person at least.
Mhm.
I had read a book and I decided to implement it is what happened. But it was with the belief and knowledge that everything is love and
Yes.
anything that isn't is an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
So so I would say it was coming from source, whatever you want to call that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you
Hmm.
just said it was a belief, that it was a, you were kind of grounded in a belief, and that, sometimes could be a lot where our kind of perspective come from, and what we believe, what we, would you
So,
agree
what
with
is the
that?
belief?
Sorry, say that again.
He says we're ground. It comes from a belief, is what Ryan was saying.
Well, she
You chose
said,
to believe something.
it came from a belief that everything is love. I think she said.
I did say that, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So, beliefs are of two kinds, Ryan. One is the kind of beliefs that you've been told this is so, and now you believe it because it was told to you by a scripture or told to you by some authority, or could
Yeah.
be whatever, the
Yeah.
law of the land, or your science teacher, or whatever else, wherever you learned it from your parents. And then there is another kind of believing. There is where you take an idea and you experiment with it,
Yeah.
right? So there's a theory, there's an experiment, and then you arrive at a conclusion.
Yeah.
I would say, even to someone who does that, because that's pretty much the process I have followed, um, always stay flexible to the next possibility. It doesn't mean that, just like see, science looks at things, or sciences of the idea that they have, what is it called, what do they call it, um, that unless it can be measured, unless it can be in some way quantified, it doesn't exist. So in other words, everything that is measurable, it falls into the category of science. Unfortunately, many things aren't quantifiable. Emotions, for example,
Hmm.
I don't think can be quantified, can't be necessarily measured. To some degree now they've got, different kinds of um, machines that are able to detect movements in the brain. That's now. And maybe they'll have something they can detect further things than that, maybe not. The question is only their limitation in being able to measure. But do things exist beyond that which we think and that which we see? Yeah. So the
No, no
experiment,
doubt. No,
pardon?
if you discover it for something for yourself, it
Right.
has a much stronger impact than something that's
Exactly.
been passed down to you.
Exactly. Exactly. There is no greater experiment than the experiments you do with yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So coming back to what Ariel was saying, was that when she did that experiment with that idea that she heard from someone, that everything is love, then she started to act upon that.
Hmm.
And then she saw the result of that. So that's
Hmm.
theory, experiment, and conclusion. Right.
Yeah.
And so now you can actually do this. I mean, I did that with non-judgment. I've done that with not eating meat. I've experimented and seen the outcomes. I've seen how it has affected my consciousness. I've noticed distinct massive changes. then I
Yeah,
hear
I've
other
always said that, like, when you learn something, if you don't apply what you learn, to me, it's like applying it.
Yeah.
It's taking it and applying it to life and
Right.
using it.
Yeah. And you know, it's not like anyone's perfect here. I've learned plenty of things that I never applied. And I can tell you that even if I went to some fancy workshop and there was, you know, great stuff being taught, if I didn't apply it, it means nothing. It means nothing. It has no value in my life. But the things I did apply, therein I found great value. And therefore I can just say that in your own life, take one thing, apply it, really apply it. And this idea that Ariel talked about, I applied that the same in my own life, and I experienced the most incredible experiences of love being all around me, in me, all everywhere. This way of being filled that nothing and no one had ever filled me like that. So it's an idea that actually can be tried and tested by anyone, and they will see the same results.
Yeah.
It's I wrote about it in my book Loving Soulfully, which you can just go to lovingsoulfully.com and download it for free, or go to my website rohitjuneja.com and you can download it there too.
I always said, I remember I studied a little bit about education at some point, and and I was stuck. This always stuck with me. There's two requirements to learn something. First
Mm.
requirement is you have to be interested in it. If you're not interested in it, kid's not going to learn it.
Right.
Period. Second thing, you have to apply it. If you're not going to apply it, you're not going to really learn it.
Exactly.
And too much of education is they're just indoctrinating, and no, no use for it.
Yeah.
Kids say it. Kids say it in school. They're like, "Well, why am I learning it? What do I care?" They say it. They actually speak it.
Yeah.
And, well, you have to learn it because one day you'll need to know it.
And
But same principle though.
very much so. So try and take something away from here today. In fact, for each of you, I would say I recommend this one idea. Take one thing away and apply, no matter how small it is. Start with small, don't start with big. That's usually how we fail. We still have some big, massive thing we want to
But
do.
they're all the same, Rory. There's no big and no small. They're
Well,
all
you're
the
right.
same. It's
You're
smart belief on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the simplest thought, okay, I'm not going to judge anyone, or everything is love, whatever. They sound massive, but the same hurdles will come up. Your mind is the one that you're going to have to tackle ultimately. This is the one that's going to come in the way. It's going to say, oh, let's just relax. Let's go out, have a drink, or let's go out and watch some TV. Or you know what? That person cut in front of you in line. You have a right to get pissed off at them. So,
What do you feel about kind of doing away with what we've been taught? Like, do you think that at some point we have to kind of just leave that, what we've kind of assimilated into and become like a rebel almost to what we've been taught? Do you think you have to go through that?
I would tell you this, I was a rebel most of my life. And being a rebel doesn't take you far, because you're rebelling against the known. I say to you one thing, rebel against your own mind. The ultimate rebellion is against this. Rebel against everything it tells you. Rebel against everything you know. Rebel against everything you think and believe. And then what will happen is your mind will no longer have power over you. And when it no longer has power over you, you will be free. And what that freedom looks like is so phenomenal. Because imagine this, imagine a quiet mind, nothing going on in here. Ooh, it's delicious. And the way you get there is take that rebellious attitude you've got, which is nothing wrong with it. It's what brings about change. But now apply it to the ultimate frontier.
Yeah.
And then see what happens.
Not just rebel, but not rebel to something else.
Yeah.
Just
I mean,
rebelling.
rebellion to something else can bring about change over
Yeah.
time. With enough people do it, yeah, it can bring about change. We've seen that happen over the centuries. But the ultimate change that you want to see is the change within yourself. Now, what happens is that when the mind becomes quiet, something else happens. You begin, your soul comes alive. You begin to see the world in a way that you've never seen it. You begin to live in a way you've never lived. You
Yeah.
begin to love in a way you've never loved. Everything takes on a different flavor because the flavor that was there till now was this adulterated mishmash of stuff that you've been socialized with and that have been ingrained into you. But take that away, you're a whole different person.
The thoughts are like the dust on a mirror.
Mm, yeah.
Kind of like get rid of all that dust that's blocking everything
That's
almost.
right. It's not letting you see either people or life as it is. People say, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. You have to do nothing. Stop struggling to survive. There is a way of living that is effortless. There is a way of existing in this world that is a way of mastery. And it does not require you to read 10,000 books and go to a bunch of workshops and learn a whole bunch of stuff. It's not about performance. It's not about, oh God, I hear this all the time. People thinking that they have to all the time be doing something constructive and productive. No, you don't. Instead, cultivate the art of doing nothing. The Italians call it la dolce far niente, the sweetness of doing nothing. And by that I mean nothing here either, just quiet. And now perceive the world, look with new eyes, feel, feel the music in the air, feel the rhythm of your breath, feel it. You will be alive in a way you've never been. And this opportunity is there for all of us. There is no one who is um, exempt. We all have it because what I am, you are. What you are, I am. What is in me is also all around me, in all of nature. People say, where is God? It's the most absurd question because God is everywhere. There's nothing that isn't God. These atoms would not move around if it weren't for that energy that you call God. The sun would not shine, the planets would not move, nothing would happen. There is an energy that is keeping all of this moving from the tiniest atom to the cell in your body to the DNA that is that and sort of is the backbone of that cell, all the way up to the planets in the universe. There is a force that is behind it. And if that ceased to exist, everything would cease to exist. So once you realize that that force exists, now the question is, why are you here then? Why aren't you there in some light or heaven? Or why aren't you there? Why are you here? Ah, you came here to find out something. This was a grand adventure. What were you going to find out? See, that house you build, that car you buy, the things you acquire, the knowledge, whatever, that will die with you. It will be lost in time. What will remain is you. You're an energy, you're a force, you're a life force that will leave this body when you die. And what that soul, what that life force energy has acquired, that will go with you. Not your stuff, not your mind, not even your learning, but the evolution you made, the growth you made in this life, that will go with you. That is your eternal wealth.
To evolve, right?
Right? And this is inner evolution. That inner evolution is, now I'm starting to really get people on that. I've started a whole course on that. You can go to innerevolutiongroup.com if you want to learn about the course that I've started on that. Innerevolutiongroup.com. Check it out. We're starting a new batch. I think it'll be end April, early May. So try and get in on that if you're interested. But you'll learn a lot. So that whole process is that to me that is about eternal wealth, and that's what I want to be. What I have learned in my life. I was 13 years old when I would say to people, I was like, they'd say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I'd say, "I don't want to do what you guys are doing. I can see you'll die and leave it all behind." And they get freaked out. What is this kid talking about dying and leaving it all behind? It must be nuts. But I could see it then, I can see it now. We're, following the Pied Piper of this society that is just leading us, astray. So that's why I do what I do and come here and, share with you what little I've learned. But I'll tell you this, no amount of learning will ultimately, no amount of my speaking will do anything. You must experience for yourself. I don't think you need to believe me. I don't think you need to agree with me. I don't think you need to understand what I'm saying even. I just say you need to experience you. You're already here. That great treasure is already here. Find it. And don't rest until you do. Do whatever it takes to to un to quiet this mind and find that inner wealth. This is the hero's journey. This is the ultimate journey. So I'll get into the Bhagavad Gita a little bit. And yeah, I still wanted to share with Ariel some passages from Loving Soulfully. But you know what I'll do is we have another meetup that happens starting 8 p.m. Pacific time. So that's on relationships, on Loving Soulfully. So if you're there, I'll read to you some passages, Ariel, on what you just talked about, on finding love everywhere, because that's the topic of that. And I'll read to you some passages from there. But
Thank you. I'll definitely stick around.
Yeah, on my
Cool.
experience. But what we do is we hang up over here, and then you click on the same link and come right back in. So literally within 5 seconds, we're back, right? We end one and start the next. They're back to back. Okay, so I'll come back to the Bhagavad Gita for a little bit. And right now I'm just going to read through a few verses. And then if something stands out, we'll pause there. Because what Krishna is describing here is the different processes that people go through. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them, and others offer sacrifices in the fire of the supreme Brahman. Some sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control, and others sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. He's talking about sacrifice and the importance of sacrifice. It's so opposite to today's time where nobody wants to sacrifice anything. We just want to take, we want to enjoy, we want to, have and do and experience, but we don't talk of sacrifice anymore. That's like a bad word, right? Does anyone agree with that? Is sacrifice a good word in your vocabulary or not? Give me a show of hands. Let me see. Is it a bad word, or if it's a good word, give me this, and if it's a bad word, give me that. Okay. So anyone care to share why? What do we think of sacrifice? Why is it considered such a bad thing? Anyone?
Because we're losing something. We're giving something up.
We're giving something up. But aren't you giving, don't you sacrifice your time to your work and your job? But you get something for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the point. That's exactly the point. You sacrifice for your children, if you're raising children, because you hope that there'll be something in it. right? So mostly people sacrifice something because they think they're going to get some benefit out of it. That is the normal course of things. Even when you raise children, you think, oh, these kids will, when they grow up, my kids, they'll be there for me. It doesn't always work out like that. My job, I put my all into it, and it'll take care of me. It doesn't always work out like that. People get fired sometimes at very precarious moments in their lives. It's 55 and 60, and suddenly they're being fired for some young person who they want to take in. There's been a lot of times we depend on something and it doesn't quite work out the way we want. But and then you think of all the people that go and pray in churches and temples and mosques and other places where they say, God, give me this, give me that. Their whole reason for going to that worship is to get something, right? Now imagine doing something for nothing. Imagine worshiping, if they would do it for no reason at all. Because what I want is not something from God, but what I want is God. What I want is you. Imagine loving someone, a person, not because of what you'll get out of them, but because of who they are. You see where I'm going with that now? Now imagine working, not working because of what you get out of your work, not working because of what they pay you at your work, but because that which you do is so fulfilling in and of itself. It is the reward that you seek. And I would wish for all of you that you would find such work that is fulfilling in and of itself, that you would find someone to love where love is enough, right? It's a big thing because we have expectations, and expectations lead to something very dangerous: disappointment, frustration. Right? Then you get let down. You expect someone to be something, and then they're not that. So it becomes very uh, painful then, because you've devoted your time. Let's say you're in a relationship, you devoted your time to this person, and now suddenly they've gone off, done something that you didn't think they should. And now you're disappointed, you're hurt, you're heartbroken. But imagine if you did things without that. Now what would happen? And please ask me questions if you've got something on your mind, and because I'm stirring something up in you. Bring up your questions. Don't be quiet.
I have a question, Rohit. In this Bhagavad Gita, when they are talking about sacrifice, are they talking about Yagna?
Yes, they're
Yeah.
talking about Yagna. So the idea was they cultivated this in everyone, that you had to offer something in sacrifice. Whether you were, so I mean, even in the church, for example, they do that. Everybody has to give like a 10% tithing or something like that. But they wanted you to start off with sacrifice by yagya, whether it was as simple as in the marriage yagya, for example, in India, they will pour ghee onto the fire. Okay. And that will make the fire even burn brighter. They will offer mantras and prayers. But the ultimate sacrifice is they were leading you to they were starting you small with these little trinkets and toys and little things to play with. But the ultimate thing that they were leading you towards was the sacrifice of your ego, and beyond that, the sacrifice of all that you are to the divine. And that is called surrender. That surrender is exhibited by Mira, the devotee of Krishna, who says, keep me any way you wish. However you wish to keep me, I am yours. So whether you wish me to sleep out on the street, whether you wish to, uh, what you wish me to wear, or whether you wish me, or you wish to cut off my head and place it at your feet, I am ready. I ask nothing from you except to be with you, to love you. And there is, and please don't do this with any human being who is exploitative and manipulative. This is not the mood to bring up to such a person. Um, this is her devotion to God. So the point is that the Vedas, they lead you from learning how to sacrifice to ultimately learning how to offer your entire self to the divine, to God. And that is the ultimate freedom from suffering. There is no more suffering. Like I remember um, going through this process myself. This is a little intimate story, but I had a 10-year struggle talking to God, saying, hey, listen, you take care of everybody else. You give them so much of wealth and so much of abundance. There's so many people that you've made into that you've given them great talents, great abilities, and millions of dollars with which they can live their life abundantly. Why do you always keep me in a place where I just have barely enough? Like I'm just making it through, scraping through. Like, can we just kind of come to a deal here? Where, I can have plenty as well. And then like, hey, whatever you want me to do, I'm there. Mm-mm, no deal. 10 years passed of repeating this request. So one day I said to myself, I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop. From here onwards, even if you want me to as a live on the streets, be homeless, if you want me to have nothing, whatever it is you want, whether whatever is your will, for me to have it all or to have nothing, or anything in between, whatever it is, I trust you, and I trust that however you take care of me is what is perfect for me. And I'm going to stop struggling to survive. I'm going to stop struggling to exist, because I know that that is what is causing me stress and anxiety and worry. And I no longer wish to live like that. I'm going to place myself in your hands. I can tell you this happened, this particular conversation must have occurred somewhere around, I'd say roughly around the year 2000, because I know a couple of years after that, I kind of walked away from everything that I was doing. Um, I can tell you that in the last 20 years, after having really imbibed that idea, there has been no more stress. I mean, stress comes, little things come here and there, but where it was 80% stress and maybe 90% stress and 10% you enjoyed your life, now it's 90% enjoying my life, and maybe there's a 5 or 10% element of stress from once in a while. But that comes when you truly, truly let go the struggle for survival. And you place yourselves in the hands of that great power that is managing the entire universe. So whether you believe in God or you don't, I do. I say that, you know what? You can call it the universe, you can call it an energy, or you can call it consciousness. But as far as I'm concerned, if it is intelligent and if it is everything, then it can also be something. If it is an energy, it can also be a person. It doesn't mean that I'm a person, but that which I came from cannot be a person. Why? Am I trying to put some limitations on what it can be or not? Actually, what is behind that kind of thinking, I believe, is what is called religious wounding, where people have been so given this weird notion by some of these religious, groups, that this guy out there in the clouds who's sending people to hell, and they've been so traumatized by that they don't want to consider another possibility. But if you examine the life of Krishna, which is what I grew up with, you hear a whole new possibility. The idea of God who sings and dances and plays and is fun loving and is naughty like a child and a lover. Um, yeah, it just is mind blowing. If you begin to understand Krishna, you begin to see, oh, what if God was like that? And perhaps it makes sense because I'm like that. And if I came from that, then, now take whatever it is I want to do and take that into its purest and most beautiful expression, and you've got God. So the story of Krishna and his life, which was also 5,000 years ago, because he's the one speaking the Bhagavad Gita, is a fascinating story. And the more you learn about that, the more you'll begin to understand that the Vedas talk about all these things existing simultaneously, that God is simultaneously an energy, the energy of the universe, as people say, is in everyone, and yet is a being separate from it all. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So, okay, so back to sacrifice, the importance of sacrifice. See, until you sacrifice something, you don't get anything. There are many people who come to spirituality and they want something out of spirit. And so now the big craze has been the law of attraction, right? And people want through the law of attraction that they can become extremely wealthy. So it sounds like a great ploy. You don't have to sacrifice anything. You don't have to, you just got to change your mindset, right? It's simple. Change your vibrational frequency and it'll happen. But I haven't come across many people on this law of attraction path who actually became multimillionaires. Most of them are broke and struggling and having a hard time. The sacrifice that is required here is much bigger. The sacrifice that is required to get what you want. You got to work for it. But here we're talking about going beyond work. We are going from karma to akarma, from action to inaction. We read about this last time. What is action? That feels like inaction. It feels like you're doing nothing at all. That is when you're following your passion. You're following your deepest calling, your highest nature, the part of you that is you're just doing what you were designed to do. I was watching the show about Tina Turner on HBO yesterday, and it's just like you begin to see, yeah, she went through a lot of turmoil and a lot of trauma, but every time she'd pick up that microphone and start to sing, it was like there was nothing else going on in the world. All her traumas just kind of like melted away. Her abusive husband and all that stuff, just everything dropped the moment she picked up that microphone. So that's when you're in your dharma, you're in your calling, you're in that thing that you were designed to do. And if you don't know what it is, observe yourself and notice it's there, it's in front of you, it's been there all along. You just got to learn how to join the dots and turn it into something that really works for you. So he's saying here that there are many ways people try to attain a better life. So here, this is about the yogis. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, and others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance, practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming, and the incoming into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of karma, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifice, they advance towards the supreme eternal atmosphere. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. So ultimately, this is what we're heading towards, the idea of liberation. Freedom. There's two kinds of work in this world. One work is that which binds you to the world, and the other side is work which frees you from this world. And that's what we refer to as your spiritual practice. We were reading about different kinds of yogic practices there. I didn't go into it length because that's fine. If you want to pursue that, you may. But the ultimate work And the ultimate sacrifice is the sacrifice of all that you think you are, your ego. Once you let go that, your ego means everything from your, let's say if somebody abuses you, calls you names, and you want to defend yourself, and that's your ego working up. All that you think you are. Have you ever tried to embrace the idea that you're a fool? If someone called you a fool, could you say, thank you, that is such a compliment, I appreciate that. If someone said to you, you're the worst human being on this planet, thank you. You have no idea how true your statement is. I am indeed nothing. And thank you for helping me realize that. Because my ego would have me think that I am something. But the truth is, I am nothing. I am just a tiny infinitesimal particle in this entire creation. I am, in fact, nothing. I try to think I'm something. I think I'm this great person when I'm just an idiot. Thank you for bringing me down to earth. This is the kind of sacrifice we're looking for. The ultimate sacrifice is the sacrifice of your ego, the false self. Sacrifice it into the fire of meditation, of truth. Yeah, it's the fire of truth, because this is the ultimate truth. You know, the ego is most wounded if you tell someone they're worthless, they're good for nothing, they have no value. And for the soul, that is the ultimate freedom. Thank you. You just showed me the truth. You woke me up. Isn't it bizarre? Questions? We're just about to wind up, so I just want to make sure we give the last couple of minutes for any questions.
I have a question. So you said, I am nothing. But I remember that last week we touched on being nothing, but also being everything. Would you mind just rehashing that other side of it?
Yes. When I say I'm nothing, for the ego, it feels like I'm being crushed. Rumi often talks about the crushing of the ego. The crushing they refer to as the threshing. I think I gave that example last time. The realization that you are nothing takes you into another, when you embrace it, not resist it. The ego resists it. But when you embrace it, I love it that I am nothing. I don't resist it anymore. Then you enter into a different realm altogether. It is the doorway to a different realm, a different way of looking at the world. And in that way of looking at the world, when you are nothing, you are in touch with everything.
Mm,
See, you
okay.
now open that door. There are two doors here. One is the door of the ego, which you've been living, and that ego wants to be something. It wants to be significant. It wants to be heard. It wants to be validated. It wants to be important. It wants to matter. But the door into spirituality is the opposite. And in that realm, you recognize that by embracing the reality, the ultimate reality of your existence, the insignificance of who you are now showered with the wealth of the universe in a way that nothing else can do. So bring it up next time and I'll go into it more in depth. If you
Okay,
like.
I will.
All right?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
good. We're going to end right now and we're going to come back to you within about 5 seconds of ending. And if you want, use the same link, join me again here. This time we're going to talk about love and relationships, but not just human relations. We can talk of relations about the divine. We can talk any kind of relationship, doesn't matter. All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rui.
If you're not on the mailing list, please put your email right now on the chat so that I can, if you're not getting my emails, please put your name on the chat so I can send you emails. And you'll get that every week then. Take care, guys. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Those of you that are just joining, please hang up. I'm going to hang up right now and then start again. So please join up again. I'll be back with you in just a minute. You'll need to click on the link and come back in again. All right. So I'm going to hang up right now. I'll be with you and then click on the link again. I'll be back with you.